Hi, everyone. So I'm Nico Rosario. I was here earlier today. I am the Creative Workforce Initiatives Director at CTG, and I will be moderating our final panel of the day, which is on theater leadership. And we have three people coming from very different backgrounds, but all have ended up behind the scenes of theater. So I'm just going to very briefly have everyone give an introduction, let us know who they are, and then we'll have a discussion about how we got to where we are today. Ruby, do you want to start since you're unmuted already?
Sure. Ruby Lopez Harper. I'm currently the Vice President, Equity and Local Arts Engagement for Americans for the Arts. I'm calling in today from Silver Spring, Maryland, land of the Nacotchtank tribe. And I do want to take a moment to honor and recognize individuals who still reside on occupied lands. And the organization that I work for is a national service organization that supports arts and culture across the country. In addition to a very long and varied experience in the theater world.
Awesome, thanks. Olivia, you want to go next?
Hello, my name is Olivia Jones, and I am the Executive Director at the Black Theater Coalition, which is based in New York City, although I am physically based in DC with my partner. And yes, we connect with folks, particularly Black individuals and creatives who are looking to work off stage. So folks who are in directing and lighting and those types of creative roles, as well as folks who want to be lawyers and marketers and administrators. So I'm very, very excited to be here.
Awesome. David?
Hey everyone, my name is David Jimenez, and I'm currently working as the Education Programs Coordinator at the Television Academy within the Television Academy Foundation. So a lot of my work right now is in career development and supporting a lot of college-age students as they're looking to navigate careers as directors, producers, administrators in television and entertainment and media arts and everything in between.
Awesome. And so we were talking backstage earlier about how we started doing this kind of work. I know for me, I was not ever like a creative person in the same way. So my path to arts administration was kind of straightforward. I knew that I wanted to be in a creative environment, and I knew that I had a very specific skill set that matched what that kind of work looked like. And so it was very easy for me to transition. But I was wondering if we wanted to start the conversation by just having you talk a little bit about how you started to navigate this path to theater leadership and administrative work instead of maybe the creative work that you thought that you were going to do when you were in high school, which is what most of these our participants are here and are in high school.
I can kick us off. So I found myself being an accidental administrator in a lot of ways when I was younger, where I was a late bloomer. So I didn't start doing theater until I was 17. And so I thought, of course, like how much fun. I loved singing. I'm going to be an actor. I love doing all this stuff. But I found myself kind of wrangling folks and coordinating events and, well, let's do a reading. Let's find all this stuff. I went to undergrad at Cal Poly Pomona, and I found myself getting a theater degree, just a general degree. I did anything I could do. I would build sets. I would work in the costume shop. I'd be on stage, and I found myself wanting to do musicals. And so I became the president of a club so that we could produce musicals. And I found myself continuing to find myself in these roles where you're trying to create and make sure that you're able to facilitate the art happening, which is what a lot of these leadership and administrative roles are. And so I found my way to it through teaching artistry, which I thought was just like something exciting. I come from a family of educators. And I was working in Omaha, Nebraska. I again saw all of these other accidental administrators in one environment. And so I decided to go to graduate school and formalize it. So I studied arts leadership at Virginia Tech. and found my way in a variety of spaces, learning about development and fundraising, learning about strategic planning, which I loved, learning about financial management, which is fine, and board governance, which is great, and just getting really, really excited, especially in the education space in theater, and made my way to Lincoln Center and Roundabout in New York City, and found myself slowly moving up the ladder from someone who is a coordinator to someone who is a manager, and to now someone who is the executive director of the Black Theater Coalition, not without being a part of art along the way, because that's sort of how I found my way into learning about these roles, because I didn't know they existed. I didn't know what development was in high school. I didn't know that teaching artists existed, even though I had experienced them in real life. So it was really exciting to discover all of these roles by being an artist and figuring out where I fit. And so that's how I found myself in the arts administration space.
Ruby, I feel like you have a kind of a similar trajectory, maybe more broad, but it sounds like maybe a similar trajectory.
Oh my word. I mean, yeah, I kind of giggled when Olivia said she was a late bloomer. I didn't get on, so I took dance in high school as a sophomore, and that was kind of my first exposure to performing in a very traditional art form, right? Like growing up, art and experiencing and expressing was just part of my DNA. It was, singing and dancing and watching my parents and uncles and aunts and grandparents, at the barbecue on Sunday, listening to music. So it was interesting, even now looking back and kind of aligning those experiences with, oh, that's art too. But I didn't start doing Eurocentric art until I was a sophomore in high school. I started taking modern dance, but theater didn't happen until I was in my third year of 6 years in community college, and I was a cheerleader. And one of my squad mates was like, so I'm doing this thing and we need dancers. And immediately I'm like, this is shady. Right. And she's like, no, come. All you have to do is dance and maybe sing a little bit. And I'm like, no. And she's like, please, it'll be a chance to hang out with me. And I went, and it was an audition to perform in the Downey Civic Light Opera production of Hello, Dolly. And so 3,000 seats, it was amazing. And I fell in love. I did musicals back to back for a year and a half straight. And I realized that while that was a life that I wanted to live, it was not a life that I could live. I had to work, and I liked eating and paying my bills. And while I was a really good dancer, it wasn't something I saw myself able to sustain a life and a living on. So I was going to school for accounting. I never thought that I would be in arts administration. I moved to Columbus for a job in 1998. And in 2000, I was going through the paper just to see if there were any audition notices, because back in 2000, that's how you found out about auditions at theaters. And I brushed off my music and I brushed off my resume, and I went and I auditioned and got cast as ensemble in Oklahoma. And that really began like my deep love affair with theater, both attending, both performing, and also producing, and then also running. So starting with that little community theater in Grove City, Ohio, 2 years later, I was voted to the board. And 2 years later, I was voted president of the board. So not only was I performing, I was choreographing, I was doing tech, so I could do lights, sound, special effects. I did props, I did stage managing, I did set dressing, I did set construction, I did costuming, kind of did all the things. And eventually also got involved in state representation, and then got involved in regional representation. And then unconnected to the job I'm doing, I now am working at the national level with advocacy services, trainings, heavily involved in arts marketing. So, you kind of never know where this stuff's going to take you. And I think for me, not really going the college route, there is still a lot of opportunity to both make it just a part of the life that you live, but also to find ways to get involved as a living. There are a lot of national theater organizations. There are a lot of regional theater organizations. And, you know, tech on the theater side is a really incredible job opportunity. So if somebody had said any of these things to me when I was in high school, I'd have been all, wait, what? So hopefully part of the work that we're doing today is to illuminate a possibility and opportunity for you all, because maybe your path is going to be different and maybe it's going to be the same.
Oh, I totally agree. And I'll just add that, you know, my first real job working in any kind of I was working in film, not theater, was I went with my friend to audition to be an extra in a movie that I didn't want to be an extra in, and I didn't have a headshot. So I gave them a resume, and I got hired to be an extra to sit outside. It was for Remember the Titans, and it was like sitting outside in a football stadium at 100-degree weather, wearing like winter clothes. And I did it for 6 hours before I called my mom and had her come and pick me up because I couldn't take it anymore. And when they called me back the next day to see if I wanted to come again, I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do it again. Because I had a resume, she said, well, do you want to come and work in the casting office? And I said, oh, is that a job? You know, like, I don't even know what that is. And I ended up working as a casting assistant for the rest. And I mean, it was like better pay, crafty all day, being on set, you know, with Ryan Gosling. Yay. So it was, you know, that was probably my accidental first administrative role that led to many, many, many intentional roles. And I wanted to wrap up with David because I want to see, you know, how I know, you know, you're sort of at the beginning of this journey. We don't know where you're going to go.
Yeah, I also don't know where I'm going to go, but I'm here for the ride and really enjoying it so far. Um, so to give like a background on where I started, so I did start doing theater when I was really young. I think I did my first show when I was 11. I was in Once Upon a Mattress at like a summer community production, and I loved it. I remember like something about being on stage and getting to do that for my family and for my friends, I adored. And so I did theater throughout high school, and in high school, I was really operating under the mindset that I was going to be an actor or a director, and that was the only option I had really within theater, or I was going to do something else. I was like, those were the sort of the two options. And then as I got further into high school, I realized that I didn't really want to be an actor or director necessarily. I didn't want to commit to that, and so I moved into a non-theater major in college. I majored in sociology and political science when I was in college, and was set on becoming a lawyer, and was set on leaving theater behind because I wasn't going to be an actor anymore, and I was done with it, at least in my head. And then I was at UCLA where I got my undergrad degree, and I was finding myself like really missing theater. And I got involved in student theater. I did a production of Oklahoma with the student theater group at UCLA, and loved it. And I had a fantastic time, met some really awesome people, and realized that I didn't love acting or directing. And what I loved more than anything about theater was storytelling. And it was not just telling someone else's story on stage, but like how theater could inform my story and how I could grow as a person. And I love the community that I built and the people that I worked with, and met some of my lifelong friends doing student theater. And had a moment in college also where I realized that I didn't have to be an actor or director. I had been working at theater summer camps while I was in college, at the same camp where I did Once Upon a Mattress when I was 11. I was the head counselor there for a couple of years, and I remember was doing that every summer, and I had people in my life telling me like, oh, like you need to do an internship or something or do something different because you can't just do like be a counselor for the rest of your life. Like, wouldn't that be nice though? And then I paused and thought to myself, but what if I could? Like, what if I could literally just work with people and work with kids and students and help people have really awesome experiences with theater that help improve their lives like it did for me. And having that thought just changed my life and changed how I navigated my career. And I decided that I wanted to really go heavily into arts education and career development. And so graduated from UCLA, looked for opportunities in arts education, ended up interning and later being an apprentice at Center Theater Group and had an awesome experience there, learning about program management and how to put on events and how to connect with students and how to just run really effective and awesome programs. And then realized that I really enjoyed career development and I loved helping people sort of navigate their career paths and to tell their own story and to navigate their lives in whatever way they saw fit. And because that was something that I had a lot of difficulty with and was really excited about finally figuring out in a way. And I took a couple different roles that were explorations of different industries. So I worked in nonprofit fundraising for a moment. I worked in career development in tech for a bit. And now I've landed right now at the Television Academy Foundation, where I'm helping support our internship program and connecting with students and sort of supporting their career development and helping them navigate the different career paths available to them as they're exploring their goals and their futures. And I'm absolutely loving every minute of it.
That's really awesome. I mean, I feel like we all sort of landed exactly where we needed to be, and we needed to sort of get to that point in our journeys the way in which we did them. And what I also wanted to know is if you could each talk a little bit about, like, I know Olivia, your position is relatively new, what you're doing now. So I wanted to see if you wanted to give us a little more information about like what you're currently doing in your new role.
Absolutely. Yes. So I joined the Black Theater Coalition team in December, which is really January because of the holidays. So you don't get to do much during that month. But as a part of my job, I get to lead our team. So we have our co-founders are also co-artistic directors, and we have a program director, and we also just added a communications director. So our team is growing. We've got 4 people now, or 5 now, which is super, super exciting. So I get to provide strategic leadership for our team. So figuring out our trajectory. We were also a very new organization where we incorporated in 2020. And so I also do our financial management, a lot of our fundraising with individual donors, sponsors, writing grants, all of the loose ends that fall from the wayside, from the folks who are doing the creative programming, as well as the folks who are working directly with our partners who are helping us to facilitate our fellowships and apprenticeships and other elements of workforce development. I get to be a part of it. And I also get to be a part of it all. Like I was talking about earlier, is we just filmed a virtual gala and I got to be there and help set the scene and help creatively direct that experience. I was also able to meet with all of our partners every time we work with a new production, a new producing company, a new theater company. I'm a part of those initial meetings and continue to be a part of those relationships. So a lot of what I do is relationship building and figuring out, as David mentioned, how to like tell a story. So it's still very theatrical. All the things that I do, all of the time that I spent on stage is referenced daily in the work, where I spend a lot of time talking and presenting and sharing and crafting a narrative, even with a budget, crafting a narrative through those numbers, and crafting and telling a story when I meet with our partners or our sponsors who are going to be funding our programming. They are really excited about the creative element of this work and really excited about this workforce development. And just because I'm not on the stage doesn't mean I don't use all of those traits that I spent a lot of time cultivating and crafting. So it's really, really exciting that I get to use, that left, right side all at once, all the time, and really dive into those administrative skills. But man, I'm always performing, that's something that's really exciting about it. So that's a little bit about what I do in my day to day, but it really changes, especially because we're on such a small team. When I worked at Roundabout, there are over 100 employees. So my role was very specific. Here, we barely just added 2 more team members. So it was 3 when I first started. So you're doing a little bit of everything. The same way that I started in theater, doing a little bit of everything backstage, offstage, on stage, so it's all so transferable. So as you experience everything, really take it in and you'll see them come back up, whether you stay in the arts, whether you leave the arts, whatever it is. All of those skills are going to like come in handy when they're in your back pocket.
And Ruby, I think that you can sort of build on that too. And I do also want to know more about what you're doing, especially because you were talking about doing some sort of policy development and things like that. So I would love to for you to share a little bit more about that work.
Yeah. So the organization that I work for is the National Service Organization. So we support both federal policy advocacy. We work with the states, we work with the regionals, and we also work at the local level. And that's the area that I interact with the most. So in communities across the country, there are organizations called local arts agencies, or they're arts councils. Sometimes they're arts commissions. Sometimes it's your cultural center or your local church. But there are center points inside every community where the arts are organized. So whether they're funded, whether there's a central calendar, whether it's kind of somebody that's mobilizing when resources are necessary, those kinds of organizations are really the ones that I interact with the most. The group that I work with really highlights community development. So the arts as a means for communities to improve either access or engagement, or how do people connect, how do communities heal. I mean, kind of thinking of every way that the arts permeate our daily existence. That's our community development area. And it's also working with cities to understand how the arts can fuel different initiatives, like revitalizing businesses or certain neighborhoods, or activating parks, or providing, arts education. There's a whole, section, not my department, but a whole section of our organization that looks at federal policy that then helps ripple effect down into the local community for funding, for guidance, for unification. And then there's also the side of the house that's our equitable workforce development team. And they really look at what does it mean to come into arts administration in the arts and culture sector. So whether you are office manager at an arts and culture organization, or you're a coordinator inside a performing arts organization, you're working at a cultural center, you're maybe sitting front desk at the gallery, there's entry points into all of those positions. And so we really look at pre-entry, which is our college age folks, all the way to elders, who are the folks that have been in the field and are moving along, but still want to stay engaged and share their learning. And a lot of that is around, equity and social justice is a really important element of our societal conversation right now. And while it is not my personal or professional responsibility to make sure that people are better humans, it is my responsibility to ensure that better practice is getting into the hands of the folks that are doing the work. And so really working with my team to make sure that the things that we're teaching folks how to do when they're learning how to do these jobs is inclusive and is equitable, and that it is the better practice that we can put forward, so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're not looking at the same landscape anymore. And then the other element of the work that I do really centers around organizing all of my colleagues at the office who are doing community work, external facing work, stuff that's outside of the organization, to ensure that we're all speaking the same equity language. So I'm responsible for documentation, I'm responsible for reporting, I'm responsible for making sure that folks have the resources, the money that they need in order to do the things that they need to do, and making sure that we have a shared understanding of what better practice looks like, both as an organization, so that we can carry that out into the field with everybody that we're working with. So when you talk about performing, oh my word, it's constant. Storytelling, having to invite my colleagues into this work. A lot of them are unfamiliar, and everybody's at a different place in the journey, and so to be able to both empathize and identify, I think a lot of what I've learned being on stage is being able to step into a character and process what that character might be feeling, thinking, and then being in dialogue with the character really kind of helps craft that. Okay, how do I tell this story to bring them into this journey with me, and how do I develop trust? How do I help them tell better story? So I think same with Olivia's references. A lot of the things that I learned during my time in theater have really helped. I mean, even as a board president, all of the operational learning that I did of how an organization runs, or how to put together a season, how to process the budget for that season, how to talk to funders, all of that has informed every aspect of the work that I've done since then.
Thank you, Ruby. And then David, I'm wondering what you're doing, even if I know you're working with students and doing some career workforce stuff. I mean, how is the equity conversation? How is that stuff how are you navigating a lot of that work in your work?
Yeah, well, at the Television Academy Foundation, our kind of mission is we're understanding that we're shaping the art of creating television, and we're wanting to educate and engage with the next generation of professionals that are going to be working in television. So equity is a really important aspect of our work, because we're constantly considering the students that are involved with our programs. We know that these are people that are going to be the next directors, the next producers, the next actors, the next everything in between when it comes to going to be telling television. They're going to be producing content that is going to be seen around the world by tons of people, and we want to make sure that we're understanding our responsibility to create a really equitable program that allows a multitude of stories to be told, that is representative and elevating tons of different underrepresented communities. So that's definitely a conversation that we're considering all the time. It's essential to our work, and it's really important that we're constantly having that at the top of our heads as we're considering our programs and the stories that we're enabling and that we're telling. So I guess I know that wasn't really a detail specific aspect for what exactly we're doing, but it's really an overarching aspect. I feel like in order to do equity well in an organization, you need to be doing it at all aspects, and you need to be having it at the top of your head in everything that you do. So that's definitely something that we're working with and that we're implementing constantly.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's a great answer. And it kind of goes into the next question I'm having is when we're talking about equity, when we're talking about leadership, especially, going into theater leadership, and how all of those areas have been, historically not very equitable. I think that it's really important and really encouraging that we have people who look more like the demographic of this country being part of those conversations. And I'm wondering if anybody wants to talk about ways that they've been sort of navigating that, if that's been, part of your decision making and your, moving into these roles, is to be present and part of those conversations.
Yes, sorry, I don't mean to always go first, but absolutely, where I found myself in primarily white institutions throughout my entire life, up until most recently being a part of the Black Theater Coalition. We are so lucky to have a board that is Black, a team of administrators that are Black, all of our fellows and apprentices are Black, our accomplices and partners and our sponsors and our funders, they are non-Black, they are other folks of color. We have all types of people that we are collaborating and working with, and find ways to uplift folks of color in general through our partnerships, because we are a coalition. So like with Broadway for Racial Justice, if there's ways that we can support other communities of color as well to lift them up, as well as many other marginalized communities, but but finding a space in which you are able to directly make a difference was something that's always been very important to me in terms of like where I was. And I think every role administratively and creatively, you can directly make a difference. And I found my way climbing up through time and space where in an education, you can see in real time what's happening. So that's something that's really, really exciting. And the benefit of that sector is that in education, you'll see the way that this is landing or not landing with a young person on their journey, or with someone who is in college or later in adulthood who's returning to find their passion in theater. And so I found my way to Arena Stage, which is where I was prior to here. And we had a fellowship program that was originally meant for BIPOC folks that over time just distanced itself from that original mission, not on purpose. It was just sort of mission drift over time. Some of the things that we hear reoccurring are like, there were no applicants of color, things like that. And the cost of living versus the stipend you receive as an intern, if it's unpaid, all of those types of things are like, and we know just in communities of color, it's not very common for folks to be able to take part in an unpaid or very low paying internship or fellowship. So something that was really, really exciting was to be able to raise the stipend that all the fellows were getting to match just minimum wage, which is a huge jump, and to return the program to be specifically for fellows of color this year. And so I saw that moment of being able to reach out and connect with where I found myself and made space for myself with the artistic director and the executive director to share the ways that we can continue to move forward, the way that we can enact all these beautiful and wonderful beliefs and policies that we had, and was able to run with that. And something that's really great is folks are listening, and that's something that's really exciting and different than earlier times in my journey. But then I made the jump to Black Theater Coalition, where we're able to go and walk up to producing offices and Broadway shows. And honestly, the first place we go are our friends, because when you work on Broadway, you make friends and they disperse to different shows because that's what happens. And you're like, hey, Music Man, what if you had a Black fellow? How exciting would that be? Or this producing office, which are traditionally pretty white and male centric in producing offices. Like, how can we encourage you to find folks? And everyone's first thought is, well, we can't find anyone. They don't want to do it. No one wants to be here. And we found the opportunity to say, we can find them. We can help connect you to these folks, and we can pay them a living wage. Something that's really special about Black Theater Coalition is that you get a 1 to 2 year fellowship, and it's $50,000 a year, which is more than I made in some of my full-time roles on Broadway. So it's a stipend that you're able to make a living. We don't want to perpetuate the starving artist. And if you are working an apprenticeship, you get $1,000 per week. Those are shorter terms, so it's not necessarily based on a specific salary. But that's something that you're able to directly implement. And when you are an executive director, you can do that with your budget. You can decide that you're going to pay a fair and equitable wage in order to make this field more equitable, when less than 1% of the folks working off stage on Broadway were Black, which is crazy because you see such an inclusive environment on stage. So we're really, really excited to be able to find those choices and make those choices. And even before I was an executive, you figure out how to make it weasel your way into the room is a skill that I'm very good at. And so you weasel your way, you plant that little earworm, and change will slowly begin to happen. So that's something that I was able to discover as a part of being an arts administrator, which was not something that I was fully capable of when I was on stage. And it might be different now because that was like 10 years ago, the last time I did like a show, but that's just a little bit about my journey and the way that we've elected to use our positions of influence and power in a very positive way to move us forward.
Ruby, I see a lot of head nodding from you. Did you want to chime in?
Oh my word. Yeah, no, a lot of head nodding, because it's true. They're especially around the internship conversation, to have been a part of the work when internships regularly were unpaid. and to watch that be okay, and practice, like generally accepted practice, to watch the movement slowly. We're not all the way there yet. To Olivia's point, folks still aren't paying, a living wage. I think we are paying $15 an hour, but it's not a full-time job. So there's still a balance there. And the other thing that I was thinking about, even prior to this conversation, is that a lot of those internships prioritize or only serve folks that are in college. And that is also a barrier, right? If not everybody, like folks like me, if not everybody goes on to higher education, goes on to secure a degree or another degree, then you're kind of shut out. And so one of the things that I've been really pushing this year in preparation for next year is to remove that as a requirement to participate in our internship program. And we run a program in New York for arts administrators, and then we also are a national umbrella for other local sites around the country. And so to be able to not only just make that decision, it's one of the fun things that you get to do when you're a VP is be like, yeah, we're going to change that. So to be able to make that decision and then to be able to guide the practice of other individuals is really exciting. And I think one of the ways that I really have taken to heart the proximity and the privilege and the power that I have in the position and in the organization that I work with. It is predominantly white. The field is hugely white. And you can learn a whole lot about it. But that doesn't make it okay. And that doesn't make it normal. It just makes it a fact. And so how do we change that? And we change that by doing things like this. People seeing people like us, and we're succeeding and we're doing great and we're excited about the work that we're doing, and acknowledging that there's still better stuff that we could be doing and there's still more work that could be done. And so knowing people like us, someday you might be on the Americans for the Arts website and you're going to be like, I remember her, click. And next thing you know, I'm connecting you to somebody somewhere in the country that might be helpful to whatever it is that you're doing. So all of the time that I've spent as an arts administrator, and even in my time in theater, has really been the common theme is connection. And so using my spaces to help others connect. So I don't go anywhere without bringing a +1 with me. And almost always my +1 is not going to be a white person. Because they probably already got an invitation. So I'm going to bring people who probably didn't get an invitation. And I'm going to make it normal for more people that look like us to be in the room and not have that be a thing. Like, it hurts my heart when people are like, the first Black Glinda or whatever. And I'm like, there should be no first. Like, we should just be normal. Why is this a thing? And I don't want to buy into the hype about it, but at the same time, I want to celebrate because fuck, hasn't it taken a while for us to get here? Sorry about that.
It's okay. We're on the internet. Anything goes.
I was all, oh.
David, I want to bring you into this conversation because you and I are not VPs or executive directors yet. Maybe we'll be in the future, but I'm wondering if you want to talk about like even what you're able to do, here in the moment. I just became a director, small D director, and I'm that's wondering, if you want to have a little bit of a conversation with me about what you're doing, even without being at the top of the list of things, how we're still able to contribute to these kinds of conversations and this kind of this kind of idea of equity.
Yeah, well, I think because I like you were saying, we don't necessarily have the responsibility and the power in that sense to be driving these bigger decisions in our roles. But I think when you're at like the position that we are in an organization or like at lower level positions, it's really important that you're thinking about sort of the community and team that you have working with you. I think as you're looking for your initial role or looking to move organizations or to grow, you have to be thinking about what you want to be growing into, who you want to be growing with, what you're considering, who is supporting you along the way. And that's something that I felt like I learned a lot in my first couple of years navigating my career is how important that community is and that team is. Because you want to be with people that are going to support you, people that are going to be having conversations and conversations that they want to, one, loop you into, and two, that you're really excited about. And if you're not getting that, that's something that you might want to just think about, like, should I go somewhere else? Like, should I be exploring a different role or different opportunity? And so I think depending on where you are in your career, you want to make sure that you have that foundation that you're growing with, because having that makes a huge difference. Like, I know right now in my current role, the team that I'm working on has done a fantastic job of making sure that I'm like able to talk about different things that are happening, and that they care about my opinion and they want to hear what I have to contribute and consider that as they're making decisions. Because regardless of where you are in your organization, your voice has value, your thoughts have value. Everyone has different experiences that they're bringing with them into their roles and their organizations. And even if you are at a lower level role, that has value and that should be heard, and that can be that can make a huge impact. And the way that I think for me that's sort of manifested into programming and into like a practical result has been in the events that I've gotten to work with and support. I know my manager has been awesome about looping me into conversations about the types of programming that we're doing. Because right now I'm helping coordinate events and coordinate panels and discussions. And she's done a fantastic job of looping me into those conversations and saying, who should we bring forward? Who should we be inviting to this panel, to this conversation? What topics should we be discussing and looking into? And of course, there's tons of different things that are influencing those conversations and influencing those panels and the decision making behind that. But knowing that I get to have a voice in that, and that my ideas are being heard and being discussed is fantastic. And I think that's a really important thing to consider in your career, because having that supportive team and a team that's going to listen to you, especially as a BIPOC professional navigating an earlier space in your career, it makes the biggest difference. And I think that's having that those conversations and that support is like one of the biggest reflections of equity at work in the workplace.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, like, I know in my experience, I worked in art education, visual arts, theater, a little bit of music, some film stuff. You know, there were times where I was the only BIPOC person in the room. There were times when everyone, you know, was that. And what I noticed about what I was doing was I was purposely moving closer to supporting a very specific group of people. And that was how I sort of navigated my jobs, was like, how can I bring these people into this space, whether it's through the arts, whether it's, you know, now I'm doing theater, which is new for me, but how can I bring people like me into this space and make them feel comfortable and make them feel safe and make them feel important? And I think that that's one of the things that we do in these sort of leadership roles, is what we should be doing anyway, in these leadership roles, is making sure that we're connecting those dots for people who may not even see dots at all. They really don't necessarily see it. And I'm wondering, because we have about 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to put that in the chat. We're happy to answer questions. But I'm wondering, as we're starting to like kind of round up this discussion, if there are things that are happening right now in the workspace that we're all holding that you want to see more of. Are there things that I know, I'm sure all of us have a laundry list of the things that we want to accomplish, but I'm trying to think more specifically about, like, what are some of the main priorities that we can see today that we know that we can start to work on, as you know, as we're doing this work in equity?
The big thing for me is letting go of supremacist culture, right? Perfectionism, excellence, So one, I believe in hierarchy. I don't believe in toxic hierarchy, right? That like hierarchy is about risk management. The higher up you go, the more risk you're taking for the folks that you work with, right? So that like, if I'm doing my job great, all of the people that I work with aren't afraid to make mistakes and are making, taking chances and trying new things and bringing new thinking, because that's what it should be. But if we're playing hierarchy to like shit on people downhill and to make things tough and to lord my power over all of, I'm not here for any of that. So I think really being okay with things not being the way that they've been. Like, I want to see change. I love what you were talking about, David, that like folks are bringing you into that's exactly what we should be doing. And what's amazing is that, you know, I won't speak for Olivia, but I know me, like, I didn't just bloom as a VP and like, you know, suddenly become all this like badass, take no shit kind of person. Like, I developed that over time because of people inviting me into conversation. You know, David, when you were talking about like community, that's one thing that I missed when I was in your space, right? That I didn't have a village around me. And I feel isolated now where I'm at because I didn't have that to come up with me. I've developed it in different ways, but I don't have those folks around me. So to get those folks around you, because it's like your squad, your crew, like someday when you are a VP, those are going to be the folks that you can really talk to when you can't talk to anybody else. And, you know, I would love to see more people be open to, you know, mentoring and supporting the folks that are coming. Like, our job now, I'm going to be 50 in October. My job is not trailblazer. My job is seed planter, so that folks like y'all are ready and positioned that when I no longer exist in this space, I have left fertile ground for y'all to do better and have better and experience better. And y'all in my same age range, I don't care where you are on the food chain, y'all should be doing it too.
Anybody else want to pitch in?
I just feel so similarly where I was very, very lucky that my first internship was at Center Theater Group and Leslie Johnson was the director of education at that time. And to see a Black woman in power so close to me, I was like, oh, of course, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I'm going to work specifically to be a director of education, which really confused my grad school. They're like, that's where you want to go? And I was like, yes. And so I found ways to get there. And I wasn't always in the presence of the Leslies. And sometimes I moved to Omaha, Nebraska for my next fellowship because they paid, if that tells you like what was available at the time, that people were not paying interns. And so I moved there. They provided housing and they paid you. And I'm very lucky because it was such a supportive environment. And our new team member that I hired is someone I met there 7 years ago. So like something that's really, really exciting to like meet those people and we bring them back up with you. But you find those folks who you meet that cultivate that experience for you. I also was able to have Brooke Whitaker when I was at Lincoln Center, and she changed the way I thought about leadership when there was a challenge that was coming up between myself and another colleague. And she took me out to lunch and she's like, what do you think I should do? And it blew my mind that someone who is in such a high like position of power at Lincoln Center of Education, like this huge institution, would ask me. And that was like, oh, I have something to say. And so that changed the way that I fit into a room when I entered the primarily white spaces at Roundabout and at Arena Stage. And I was like, if someone over here could ask me, then I have something to say. And so I'm going to find space to say it. Although sometimes it was risky, I did find ways in space to say it. And now I'm the executive director, which is really exciting and really great. But I don't know anything the way that our fellows know it. They're the program participants. If something is wrong, they know better than I do. I'm here to convey what's going on, to convey that message, to guide us strategically, but they know more than me. And so I think that's something that's so exciting to continue to hold and create space for everyone around you because they know more than you. And you're able to leverage that to uplift your entire community. We are stronger together than we are as an individual. And that's something that's so, so, so exciting about being a part of this space is that I can set myself aside and bring someone else in.
Oh, I love that. I love everything that you guys have said. And David, I want to give you a chance to sort of clear it, to finish up the conversation here.
Will do. Okay, so I want to keep going off of Ruby's metaphor because I love what you said about leaving behind fertile ground. for people to sort of grow in and that foundation. And I want to sort of pivot that and just say that when you're really early in your career, like you can treat yourself as like a seed. And so you have the choice over where you plant yourself and where you build those roots and the fertile ground that you start in. And so you should just consider that and think about that. Where are you going to feel supported? Where are you going to grow? And also, because when you're early in your career and you're planting your seed, you can move the seed if your interests change. If you need to go somewhere else or try something different, you can always feel comfortable doing that as well, because there's so many different places you can go, roles that you can try, and you can move your seed elsewhere and find a different fertile ground if that's what you're looking for and that's what you feel like you need to grow and to feel supported. So I love that you started that metaphor. And when I thought of like the pivot for it, I was like, I have to say this. I'm so excited. But yeah.
I love that.
Where it's going to grow best.
Unapologetic. Be unapologetic about that. Like, you are sacred, and the ground you sit in should feed you and nurture you. And our best growth happens when we are most uncomfortable. So don't be afraid when the door, kick the door open if it's time to go.
Oh, I love that. I love that everything you guys said today. And that was such a fun way to end our sessions for today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being candid and, slightly risque in your language, but it's fine. It's great. I'm so happy that everyone came today, and this will be our last learning session for the day. So right after this at 2:30, we're going to open up like sort of a closing discussion where anyone who wants to stay and participate is welcome to come and join and talk about your experience for the day. We'll leave that open until 3 o'clock. So hopefully some people will come in and we can have a little bit of networking. And thanks again to everyone on this panel and all the panels that we've had all day today. So much food for thought. And we'll see you next time.